Okay, welcome everyone. It is January 8th, and we're having a gathering today with some faculty from the upcoming West Coast Constellations Intensive, Susie Tucker and Sara Payton. I am going to introduce them just a moment, but because for some people this platform is new, I'd like to take just a couple of minutes to orient you to Zoom. Welcome to Zoom if it's your first time. What I'm about to say is going to vary a little bit if you have a tablet or you're on your phone. So you're a little bit on your own. If you're on a tablet or phone, you're going to have to find these functions on your own. But if you're on a computer, in the upper right-hand corner, you will find a toggle, which will either say speaker view or gallery view. Feel free to click on that. And speaker view means that the speaker is really big, in which case I should be really big right now. And then you'll see a few people along the top, not much of the group, but a little bit of the group. If you're on gallery view, then you got little tiny squares for everybody. And you can do it either way you like. If there's going to be a bunch of talking from our faculty, you might enjoy going on to speaker view for a little bit and seeing their faces big. But that's a convenient little toggle there for you. If you are on gallery view, you will notice we have more than 25 people on the gathering right now, in which case there is this little like window slidey thing, and you can see more of the people if you want to, and that's mostly for Susie and Sara if you want to see those faces. On the bottom left-hand corner, there's a couple of things that are really useful. When you are brought onto the Zoom call, we have you automatically on mute. And we're going to ask you to please stay on mute. When there are this many people on a call, the feedback gets really crazy really fast once we have a bunch of people who are not on mute. Just the background sounds can kind of set it off. So please stay on mute unless I unmute you and invite you to ask a question. The stop video is if for some reason you don't want to be seen. It's kind of like the version of a video mute. So if you're self-conscious about being, it's the middle of the night where you are, or you're eating or whatever. However, we do like it if you keep your pictures up because it's nice to see you. It's nice to have a sense of the group. It's kind of like Constellations work in that we get a better sense of the field when we can kind of see and interact just a little bit. For those of you on the phone, there are a few of you who are calling in on the phone. Then, of course, these functions are not available to you. My apologies for that. This is really a visual medium. Finally, sort of in the middle bottom of your screen is a chat function. You can click on that, and a little chat shows up on the right-hand side. Some people are sharing where they're coming from. Please do that right now. It'd be great for Susie and Sara to get a feel for where you're all coming from. We got some people from the UK. We've got someone from Southern California, from New Jersey, Chicago, Santa Barbara, San Francisco, outside of Mexico City, Tucson, Arizona. We got people from all over the country and all over the world. It's really nice to have you. And because we're a large enough group, this is the way I'm going to invite you to ask questions for now. We may change that depending upon how the webinar goes, but as it's a great way as Sara and Susie are speaking, instead of interrupting them, you can just type in your question right into the chat, and I will be watching and paying attention and calling up for your questions as we go along. So it is lovely to have you. It's a huge group of people. We've got 30 people so far. It's fabulous. My name is Leslie Nips, if you're wondering who the heck I am. I'm an organizer and trainer in Oakland, California, and I am the organizer for the 3rd annual West Coast Constellations Intensive that's up here in Northern California in March. I'm going to introduce our faculty in just a moment, and then the other things that are going to happen during this short webinar is really not the right word for it. It's more like a coffee hour. is really kind of what we're up to here. We're going to listen to their teachings a little bit. You're going to have an opportunity to ask questions. Then they're going to lead us through some constellations exercises. So I really look forward to that. And then at the end, I'm going to share a little bit about the intensive for those of you who are wanting to know more about it and have some questions about the intensive that's coming up. So without much more ado, welcome to Sara Payton and Susie Tucker. They're the faculty at the upcoming West Coast Constellations Intensive, along with Peter DeVries, who is not here today. We're going to do a second webinar on January 28th, and I'm going to tell you more about that in a moment. That will introduce you to Peter. Just an FYI, 2 more days on save $300 on the registration if you're on the fence or just finding out about it. What we found out about Susie and Sara is that although they are both leaders in the constellations world, they haven't really met until I had the stroke of genius of bringing them together for this intensive.
Thank you, Leslie.
And as I understand it, they're enjoying getting to know each other. Susie is on the East Coast, one of the first people here in the US who had a relationship with Bert Hellinger, and is getting over a flu. So special thanks to Susie for coming with her scarf and everything. And Susie, could you introduce yourself a bit more and share more about who you are, what you do?
Sure. First of all, how cool to see all of these people on my little screen here, and to kind of feel your presence and to even know some of you and be a little surprised to see some of you. How fun is that? And Sara, I want to say it's really very nice. I think this is the 3rd time now that we've had some sort of contact with that. It's really enjoyable. Did you lose me? No.
You froze for just a second, but you're back.
Okay, I'm going to try to stop moving. I gesticulate a lot. Okay, I had an early contact with Bert Hellinger. I met him as a publisher. And, I always like to tell the story that I rejected his book. I think that gives me a special place. And that I was an acquisitions editor for a behavioral science publisher for many years, and actually was in psychology publishing for 33 years. My business partner encouraged me to look again. He was a student, and he actually taught Hellinger, come to know much later, in Ericksonian hypnotherapy. Took another look, began to work on the book Love's Hidden Symmetry for about a year. Thought I pretty much knew everything. Thank you for holding it up, Leslie. And then we brought Bert to the United States to do a workshop. And I went to the workshop and realized I didn't know a darn thing. I got the language of it. I was interested in the language of it. But there was something that happened live and in person that I did not really have access to. Anyway, Bert is one of 100 teachers, I would say. And he is somebody who really the thing that he gave to me was this gift of come as you are and bring everything to the table. And to do this work, you bring everything to the table. You don't bring one thing. You don't trade out what you've learned and now adopt this new thing. You bring everything to the table. So I've been doing that for about 20 years now, bringing everything to the table, which means that it's an endlessly creative world for me, always a little bit frightening, because you never know what you're going to get into. And I think if I become not a little bit frightened, I will probably be sleepy and should stop doing the work. I train, in big quotes. I teach. I facilitate workshops. I write. I continue to write. Organizing for BERT was an essential piece for me because it let me learn about the work through the back door, be taught by him through the back door, and take a place in introducing this man into the United States. And it's something that I forget to take seriously, that I had anything to do with it. But in this very moment, I'm looking at Sara and I feel very proud of that.
Yeah.
That I just had the nerve to keep showing up, basically. So my work tends to focus on the East Coast. It is very easy on the East Coast, I would say, and it's partly because of the diversity and fluidity and extraordinariness of New York City. It's hard to leave and go to places where things feel less diverse, less, because so much work is sort of done for me. Okay, so that's a start. I haven't spoken in 2 weeks, so you got a fast talking babbling going here.
That's great, Susie. Thanks so much. And we'll find out more about what you're up to. But for now, Sara, who's returning faculty for the intensive and is mostly based in Portland, Oregon, could you introduce yourself, please, to us?
Thank you, Leslie, and such a pleasure and an honor to be here with Susie, and a delight to get to meet you after hearing about you so much, so many good things. I'm a grandchild of Bert Hellinger not in a literal sense, but rather in that all of my teachers studied directly with him, but I have not studied directly with him. I have had the opportunity to study at the Byrne-Reed ISCA Intensive for a number of years, getting to work with folks who are well known. And my major teacher is Elena Veselago, who is a Russian constellation facilitator who has an enormous institute in Moscow where thousands of people begin her training. Not all of them finish it. But the work of Constellations in Russia is really happens at an extraordinarily different level than it happens here in North America. And it's kind of magical and inspiring. But I travel all over the world and teach. I bring together a study of the neuroscience of resonant language and how language, the way we use language can change us. There's ways that we use language that leave us completely static and unchanged, and there are ways that when we really join each other with our language, the most enormous shifts happen. And I'm the author of a book called Your Resonant Self, which is all about the neuroscience of resonant language. And I just came back from a retreat I did in Hawaii called Finding Joy, about the birthright, our neurobiological birthright of joy, and using constellations to help us really feel into our own birthright of joy. So I'm feeling kind of uplifted and full from that lovely workshop.
Thank you, Sara.
Yeah, you bet.
And let me just ask a follow-up question as we move a little bit more into discussion. One of, I think, of your unique contributions is that you have been constellating parts of the brain.
Yes.
or aspects of the brain, if not necessarily, gray matter. Maybe even just an example so people can get a sense of what we're talking about, because I experienced that in particular at the national conference in Virginia Beach, and it was great fun. And if you could just share a word or two about that.
Yeah, well, what we were working with in Hawaii was the circuits. So we all have, it's sort of, if you had a map of the brain, it would look a little like the London Underground. And we often think about brain pieces doing a particular thing, but really the brain is a multi-layered systems. And so if we, for example, if we're talking about joy, then we would be working with the play circuit. And there are 7 circuits that are the circuits of emotion and motivation, and we can constellate them. We can put play out into the field and then see what are the other circuits, the circuits that run through the brain and then travel through the brainstem and include the full body. So it's a brain-body experience of constellating. What is it like to put our play circuit out there? What's it like to see if it's being blocked by fear or by rage or by grief? What if we think about our seeking circuit, the circuit that really takes us into life and lets us do things? How much is that seeking circuit, which is different from the play circuit, getting in the way of joy if we're just totally, for example, like myself, totally focused on work? If we are dealing with workaholism, how do we mitigate and acknowledge and look not only at our own system, but at family systems? What was happening with our mother's seeking circuit? What was happening with our father's play circuit? So we can constellate brain parts and brain circuits and different aspects that make up trauma. We can come at from many different angles to work with different issues.
And I assume you're thinking about offering a piece of this at the intensive, because it's enormous fun.
Yes, absolutely.
It brings a playfulness into the work, even though it remains very serious and actually can bring a lot of change just in a way constellations do.
Yeah.
So great, something to look forward to. Great. Susie, I'm wondering, what are you thinking about or chewing on these days, or working on for yourself with respect to constellations that in some way has your attention or interest these days?
I think, I think I've probably always been interested in the same things in a way, but different things come to the fore at different times. So I would say at the moment, what has my attention is this sort of precipice between accumulation of insight and knowledge and actual capacity or belief in one's capacity to make change. So I'm interested in the kind of tipping point where a shift becomes something irresistible, in fact, something easier than the status quo. And I see it often. I never can bank on it. So it's of interest to me, right? Because it is leading me. I don't have the formula for it, but I see when people cross that precipice, when they move through that threshold, and all the insight that they have gathered, whether it's 20 years or 60 years or 90 years worth of knowledge, spills over into something that looks like change. Something that says to a person, yes, you have the capacity to make a shift. You have the capacity to leave the threshold and go through the door. So that's what has my interest. I think that you'll hate this, Leslie, but I do think constellations are about everything on some level. Everything is relevant. Everything is relevant. And people come with an issue, but that issue actually masks a way in the world, right? It is an abbreviation for a way in the world that gets kind of gunked up in what we call our issue or our dilemma or our problem. So it took a million strands to create that particular alchemy, and it takes a million strands to kind of move us out of it. So this idea of, and it goes to a little bit of the title of the conference, this idea of kind of relentless optimism. You know, what does relentless optimism lead to? And where is the tipping point for people?
Beautiful. And I'm going to ask you a follow-up question on that. But before I do that, just want to invite people, you may have 10 questions in your head already, just hearing Susie and Sara. There's your chat. Feel free to type any of those questions in, and I will get to them as I can. So just a reminder of that resource for everybody. Susie, my follow-up is, in one of our conversations to everybody, we're gathering to plan the event and to arrive in particular at the theme. You said some really beautiful things in that conversation about fate and what it means to love one's own fate and love the fate of another. Is that connected to what you're saying? And if so, could you say a few words about that?
Yeah, I'll try to stay short so that I don't start stumbling,
I know, like
stumbling over myself.
Just a small question.
Just a little thing about fate. It is connected because I think that, you know, this work on, obviously it has many levels and many lenses, but certainly one of the extremely important aspects of it is this idea of inclusivity, right? And we often understand inclusivity or pay lip service to it or know we should or know we become what we reject and all of that stuff. But including our fate is a difficult task for most of us. For instance, we will all die. That's a period. There's a silence after that. Tomorrow, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 30 years from now, there's so much effort, it seems to me, in sort of staving off that point, that moment, that fate, that we look away from life in order to do it, which is a strange, paradoxical quagmire we get ourselves into. So this idea of loving one's own fate and the idea of, and I saw Bert actually do an extraordinary constellation 1,000 years ago with a man and his wife who was dying. Right there, she was dying. And his, out of love and what Bert might call innocence, his whole quest was to divide her from that fate of her own death. And Bert made the point that you can't actually love somebody unless you love that which guides them. So fate is that which guides us for me.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for that story. And I love it when we remember the constellations we saw masterful facilitators lead, particularly Bert Hellinger. So thank you for that. I'm going to shift gears here now with that, that story that involves an example, and turn back to Sara for a moment. And Sara, would you be prepared to lead us through an actual experience?
Oh, sure.
And then we'll have Susie do something with us.
Okay. So what I'll invite, and there was a question, I'm not sure my net mic actually works, Julia wrote. Well, we need it later on for the exercises. And at this point, I'll be asking you to work on your own rather than us being interactive since there are so many of us. So just wanting to catch that and letting you know that this will be a bit of a guided meditation / constellation for you to be able to begin to consider.
And also just to respond to Nick just asked a question right at the moment I shifted gears, but we'll circle back to Susie and we'll get that question in.
Wonderful. Thank you, Leslie. So just for a moment, allowing yourself in transitioning from this super engagement of that we were with Suzi, and all of the kind of sparkling repercussions of what she was saying. Just allowing yourself to notice that you do have a body, that you are here in your body, and that the real convergence between you and the outer world is your breathing. So letting yourself notice your breathing as this tipping point between self and not self. And letting yourself just kind of dip into and relax into the way in which we are both and always self and not self. And now letting yourself begin to notice or think about two states of being. One is the state of full, authentic expression. Just feel into what is it like when you claim your right to actually exist as the self that you are. How does it feel in your body? And there may be different kinds of resistance, or what the heck are you talking about, Sara? Just to allow yourself to step into it for a moment, just if you can, if it's available to you, to who you have a sense that you were born to be and that you are always becoming, paradoxically, both at the same time, being and becoming. And allow that breath to complete. And now step into a wondering about what your body feels like when you have a sense that you belong completely and fully. And notice if there's a difference between expression and authenticity and belonging. How is it to have both of those kind of bodily state representations here for you? Are they very different? Do you breathe differently in each of these states? And now, for a moment, let yourself place representations. One representation for yourself in full authentic expression. One representation for yourself in complete and total belonging. And allow yourself to imagine that it might be possible in this or some other alternate universe that these two states could actually merge, that you could have full, total expression and a complete sense of belonging simultaneously. You may have a little sense that your body is exploding, but allow them to separate again. And now let yourself feel into who are the missing representatives in this field. What happens if you place your mother in this field? And what happens if you notice her full expression and her belonging? For me, it brings tears to my eyes. She didn't get to have either. Let yourself just have those three representations be on the field. Notice where the representations turn and how you are moved or not moved. And for one more moment now, invite your father into this imaginal field and his full expression and belonging. Again, I just have a sense that I got to catch glimpses rather than really get to experience. But what's it like if he's here and in my my experience, there's a sudden, strong weight on my chest. And now bring, as a final movement, bring a new representative to the field, a compassionate and completely understanding witness who stands and sees all of these different states of being in relationship with one another. And for a moment, allow yourself to become that representative, that compassionate witness. How is it to see this little family system that we're touching and holding? How much tenderness might be here for the witness? How much comprehension? How much of a sense of course? And for me, as I bring this compassionate witness, I also, the family history begins to appear as well. So just allow yourself to make a small bow to your own family history and to send a bit of this soft and nurturing gaze of the compassionate witness to hold each of the elements of this system. And now coming back to your breath as we transition back into this very juicy and vital discussion that we're in. Allow yourself to notice maybe the pictures of the people who are here in this circle with us, and that each of these people had their own experience with this invitation. And then just bringing it back to you, Leslie.
Thank you, Sara. Wow, lovely. Gosh, I love this little tool we have called Constellations. Isn't that fabulous? Shares. It would be really nice, I think, for Sara and for all of us to hear a couple of brief shares about what that was like. Also, if you ended up with some questions or if you ended up with something sticky that you need to ask Sara about, she might give you a little tip about how to go back to it. You can raise your hand, although I might not see you. You can also, if you're able to, unmute yourself. Catherine Revoir, I saw you. Go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for that, Sara. That was wonderful. And it meets my need for having more information and understanding about doing constellations online, which is something I would really like to do. I have access to a whole ministerial demographic that's all online. And so any opportunity to see constellations online, I really welcome it and praise you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Catherine.
I'd love to see a workshop on that.
Fun.
Yes, constellation meditations are a great way for, groups that are not in the same room. It's a wonderful tool. Thank you, Catherine. Anyone else have a share or a question for Sara around that exercise?
I see Tatiana's hand up.
Okay, there she is. Yes, thank you. I just tried to unmute. It's not unmuting. I don't know why. There you go.
Thank you very much, Sara, for exercise. It was an amazing experience on first part when, sorry for my English, sometimes it's hard for me to find right words. So when a first part and second part supposed to get together inside. So when I was trying to come in, I find out that it was like busy. they was like crowded. I didn't have space there to come in. So, and then kind of like like for mother was no space. And then when a father comes, you know, it's like different things come out of, like unwanted things come out. So finally I got like everybody there and peaceful, and everybody has space. I feel like I still have to think about this and let it, you know, go on still, but it was amazing experience.
Thank you, Tatiana.
I very much appreciate your notion of there not being room for some of them. That's and feeling that way. Yeah, thank you. One more share, or someone had a question or anything that was sticky. Want a little guidance from Sara on it, or just to share what it's like. I know we all appreciate when we hear, how did it feel? Excellent, Alexandra.
I can share is that I began to see myself, and then I saw my second self, and at the beginning when I saw my second self, I tried to give like specific things I would like to see in my life, you know, like in creation. Then my mother came in, my father came in. That felt very soothing. But what was really amazing was that I think it's this second image of myself started to transform. These compassionate eyes that when you mentioned it, I was already struggling with it because I could not see anymore. I could not see anymore the specifics, but what I started to feel was this beautiful, bigger energy than myself. And what I really appreciate for your meditation is the possibility of giving this gift to the field of my both parents. And then suddenly it was just like uniting with my higher self. That's how I ended up looking at it, and turning forward to my life with my parents on the back with this. So it was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing, Alexandra.
Thank you, Alexandra. And I saw Susie's hand go up, and we're going to shift to her anyway. I did notice before I unmute you, Susie, that Leslie's asked a question about the intensive, which I'm going to get to at the end, okay? So I've noted your question. Susie, you wanted to share, and then we might turn it over.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I actually found myself, I didn't actually, how would I put it, Sara, that I didn't make choice to listen particularly. I thought, okay, I'll just let Sara do her thing. And
you get to rest.
and I'll get to rest. And that I went very far away. And it was a really, I can't really tell you much about the content, but I will say that it was a very actually restful experience of, you know, I want to do this, like pieces coming in. And as I always think of constellations as being out there in that sense, these pieces, and here. And I could feel sort of my chest being connected with my back, and I could just begin to feel, and then you started talking about coming into your body, and I thought, that's exactly what I'm doing. So that was beautiful, just the kind of outward and the inward, and I have no idea what you said or what I saw.
Thank you.
And Susie, I'm going to come back to you in just a second, but Mayim just had a quick question for you, Sara, and I'm noticing we don't have a ton of time, so if you have a quick tip for her, but she said, I have a very hard time to see anything, which is a common issue. So if you have a word about that.
We are learners in different ways. So some of us have an easy time with visual images, and some of us don't have any. That channel is not a fun or very interesting channel for us, which is one of the reasons it's so wonderful to be in person, because we would get to put these representatives out be with them and enjoy them to their full. So my wondering is if maybe your channels for other, if you receive the world in strongly through the oral channel, or through texture or movement, and if guided visualizations wouldn't necessarily be your favorite thing.
Thank you, Sara. And that's a whole topic in and of itself, isn't it? How to, visualizations and how it works.
Yeah.
Susie, back over to you. I'm going to invite you into a very quick response to Nick's excellent question, and then move into your exercise so we have enough time at the end to chat a little bit about the intensive. But it asks a really good question in response to your relentless optimism thing, which is relentless optimism the ideal state for healing? Can optimism be naive and therefore running away of some sort?
Well, it's all semantics, isn't it? I would say in my hands, no, that optimism is it's funny. It's like optimism is something that I have discovered over time. It is certainly not something that I would consider myself having come to the table with. And I think, the more difficult the world looks, and, it looks pretty difficult sometimes, optimism is kind of a superpower. And it enfolds everything else. So in other words, when I lose track of it, I ask myself, perhaps I'm too focused here. Perhaps I am somehow personally connected to this person's well-being on my own terms, right? Perhaps I am looking through the microscope and not seeing the whole picture, because the whole picture is optimistic in the sense of continuation, right? It's not a sentimental idea. It's the idea of the continuation of life force. And we have a whole lot of evidence that says we as a species, as a planet, have been, very close to hell. And somehow those embers of optimism have kept us going. I don't see it as a sugary concept. And I get Nick's question. I really get Nick's question. But I see it as actually a force. I think optimism is a force. And I think that one of the things I sometimes bring to the table is I'm pretty energetic. And I'm always looking, you look for the diagnosis. What the heck happened to this person? Where did things get shut down? All of that, very important and interesting. But for me, it is where in the system are the portals to life force? Where are they? I know they're there because the person is standing before me, right? So I see optimism as a force. I see it as a nitty-gritty power tool.
Awesome. Thank you. And I hear it implicit in your story about the constellation Bert did for the man and his wife, and the woman was dying.
Right.
Nothing was going to stop her from dying. It's holding it differently.
And yet there is a solution. Yeah.
Yeah. Having said all that, can we put ourselves in your hands and lead us through an experience?
So I like the question about not being able to see anything. It's near and dear to my heart. I see things. You do if you do this work, right? You're following something that you see. Sometimes you're going so fast it looks like you're leading it. But the truth is, at least from where I sit, I'm always following. The client is always the guide. The system is always the guide. It's always there already. And we're revealing, pulling back petals here and there. This is all to say that what I've done is I've written something, Leslie. And I would consider this in a way the only word I could come up with was a prayer. So I invite people to close their eyes or keep them open, stand up, sit down, listen closely, don't listen at all. However it is, you can hear my voice. And let me read to you for a moment. I trust this force at my back. It offers support and it asks nothing in return. It is lineage on both sides, beyond my personal photo album of disappointments and misunderstandings. The weight at my back is centered within itself. It doesn't lean in or threaten to withdraw. It invites me to stand straight, shoulders softly hanging from my bones, vertebra gently stacked, legs and heart and gaze, taking in the power of the lives already lived that somehow got me here. I feel alert. In the space between what was and what will be, I am free to inhabit myself, to offer what I receive. It is warm from shoulder blade to shoulder blade. A little giggle in my spine as I feel the ancestors writing me into life. My fingers picking out the best keys to blend my vocabulary with theirs. How to let myself use all of that content from which I have been formed to create something new rather than to be swallowed. Ha, a turn of the page. Their page becomes mine, becomes other pages. Here at the edge between before and after, I receive. What I owe, I pay forward, not back. The ancestors pour their life force into the horizon. It is there for me to witness, to absorb, to move toward. I will contribute mine too. This image rises up to meet old images, carried in the pocket of a smaller world. The images that have so often felt like truth. The self-rejections that once arrived, one after the other, pressing into me, telling me to shh. That still do sometimes. The not enough and too much simultaneously. Old messages. Oh, and the terrible rejections of others I have too often offered in response. Where once I was madly in love with all of the disguises, shame and fear and anger and being out of sync, I am more peacefully in agreement with something more now. The easier companionship of what has already been. 1,000 years ago and just yesterday, the mother and the father, the mothers and the fathers, their love, their secrets, their guilt, their despair and poverty, wealth, violence, goodness, creativity, isolation, joy, all of it, all of that content, mine too. Delicious freedom is in both inhale and exhale, in the breath that whispers, let belonging flow into you and through you like oxygen. Plant seeds, always plant seeds. Thank you.
Thank you, Susie. That was lovely. I feel stronger. Is there anyone here who would like to share? I mean, something like that is often better greeted with silence. But does anyone want to share with Susie what that was like for them? Or a question that arises? Janelle says, so good.
Thank you, Janelle. I was going to say, I will share that it's such a wonderful experience to have somebody listen to words. it goes to what Sara was saying, I think, around this resonance of language.
Yes. And Janelle has raised her hand, so I'm going to go find Janelle.
Can you hear me?
Janelle, is that you?
Yeah,
Excellent,
that's
go
me.
for it.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Susie. Hi.
How are
I hope
you?
you're
And then I
feeling
also saw
better.
Galina.
I hope you're feeling better and better. I just want to say thank you. That touched all the parts, and your writing is really beautiful and really spoke to me fully, and a lot of what I've been experiencing lately. So I just wanted to honor your words and your writing and say thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Janelle. Thank you.
Thank you, Janelle.
Yeah. That's all.
And Galina, yes, has her hands up. Go ahead. Whoops, there you go.
Okay. First of all, hi, Susie. It's so great to see you.
Nice to see you.
It just confirms the importance for me to continue giving the workshop, which I call taking the presence from our clan, taking all the positive, because then we often put a lot of emphasis on the problems or what was difficult. I mean, when people come to do a constellation, they don't come because everything's going well, you know. But I do offer this one-day workshop where we don't do any constellation, but it's just a workshop with a few exercises where we're only taking the good. And what you just read makes me really realize, my God, I mean, most of them would have had all the reasons on earth not to have children, and they still did. So this optimism, the way you spoke about it, this life force has been going through ever and ever. So, you know, there's only one word, and, you know, it's like, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, and just personally, so beautiful to see you.
Yeah, hopefully Sara and Susie are both seeing some of your fans, as well as some new fans out there as well. Okay, well, thank you so much to Sara and Susie. I'm going to grab things for just a moment and share a bit about the intensive, and hopefully answer Leslie's question and anybody else's questions about it. And if there's a little time at the end, we'll take a few more questions again. But what I would like to share here to start out with is just some information. The West Coast Systemic Constellations Intensive coming up March 8th through 12th. It's really not that far away. With Sara Payton, Susie Tucker, and Peter DeVries. Part of the timing for this is so that you know that you have a couple more days to save if you want to register now. The private rooms are sold out, but some limited spots are still available in double rooms and camping and commuter. Also, as I said, please come back. We're going to be doing another one of these on January 28th at 12 o'clock. Please note that. It might confuse people a little bit. It's an hour earlier than this one. Pacific time, that is, of course. There's the website for registering and the email if you want to follow up on any questions with me. I wanted to share just a little bit about the intensive, in that the structure, Leslie asked a little bit about, you know, what's going to happen basically. For those of you who have done intensives are a very special format. They're different from workshops and they're different from conferences. Intensives really are an opportunity to marry the best of the two. So the depth and experiential aspect of a workshop, but the exposure to several different faculty that you might get in a conference, but do it deeply for both. So a lot of our time is we're spent in cohorts, where we are arranged in small groups that are with our peers. So those of you on the call who are total beginners and newbies, yay! There's a group for you guys, and the work was oriented around that. And then there's a group for those of you who are perhaps trainers or advanced facilitators, and your group is oriented around that. And then folks more in the middle, oriented around that. Those groups are somewhat self-organizing. So at the higher levels, You may want to just watch those faculty work and learn from how they facilitate, or you might want to facilitate under their guidance and mentoring. This is all possible. That's where you really get to know a small group of people really well, and by the day 1 or 2, you're really going in there. However, there are also some workshops, which is what I have up on the screen right now. You may have wondered, what are we looking at here? This is from the website. And these are some of the workshops that are also going to be part of it. So we already heard from Sara. We're going to be hearing about play and the unconscious contract. Peter DeVries, intention constellations. Suzi's, I'm really fascinated by when healing threatens equilibrium. Anyone ever come out of a change work experience and felt a little stumbly? How does that work and how do we move through it? Sara Payton is also going to do something on innocence and belonging. Sounds like a little bit of a reference to the mini meditation she did with us earlier. Peter DeVries is going to introduce some of his walking in your shoes stuff, which you may have heard of in other places. I've done it. It is fascinating, amazing work. You can do it with just one representative. It's really cool. And then the couple's journey, which is going to be for couples, for singles, and for people who work with couples to explore the different dynamics of coupledom. And there's going to be large group gatherings, there's going to be yummy food, there's going to be time off in this beautiful place outside of Santa Cruz. So I invite you to consider that and reach out to me with any questions you might have, and also to sign up for the webinar later in the month with Peter DeVries, and Susie will be coming back with us as well. This is a good time for any last questions for me about the intensive, or for Susie and Sara about their work, or any last shares or thoughts. So raise your hand or just unmute yourself and speak. Anybody?
We do have that question from Leslie about supervision. Yeah.
Yeah, Leslie, I was hoping I got to that as part of my summary, but if it didn't, raise your hand and ask further. There are a lot of Leslies on this call. There are 3 of us. This has got to be a record. Other questions or thoughts or last thank yous for our faculty? Leslie, go ahead and Weinstock in this case. Go ahead, here you are. Unmute. I've unmuted you, Leslie.
Okay. My question was, during the time that the participants are doing constellations, when we're not in a group with a trainer or a class, are the trainers available to give us feedback?
Oh, you mean outside of the group time?
Yes.
Got it. I am sure there is some opportunity for that. The days are extremely jam-packed. And so we do want to honor the faculty's energy levels so that they can have breaks, so that they can be really available to you during those group times. It's certainly not that they're available for what would be called in-depth mentoring or one-on-one work, generally speaking. But I'm sure that they would be available to give you, a bit more one-on-one private feedback if you end up, say, facilitating a constellation with their mentorship and coaching. Hopefully, most of the feedback you need and most of the information you need would happen during the process. That would be ideal, along with the support and input of your peers. Hopefully that answers your question, Leslie.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Other questions or comments or shares? Natividad, thank you. And currently my homeland doing ancestral lineage healing repair. So appreciate this moment of connection. Both group dynamics were both rejuvenating and affirming. Thank you for saying so, Natividad. Really appreciate that. So it is 2 o'clock here in Oakland, California. Susie or Sara, do you have any last thoughts you would like to share with the group before we sign off today?
Susie, are you willing to go first?
I am willing to go first. Yes, I'm just looking out the window, and the sun is going down in Connecticut. Just really to say first of all, what a lovely hour this has been.
Mm-hmm.
And I really want to thank you, Leslie, for putting this together so effortlessly seeming. I know that's a lie, but it certainly seems smooth and easy and inviting. And I am very excited about this intensive. And the Navidad talked about the affirmation of today's speaking, and I feel that actually really like, wow, okay, this is irresistible. So thank you. And thank you, Sara. Again, it was beautiful to see your work, to be a part of your work, understand a little bit more, and I'm excited to learn more and more. And thank you, everybody. What a wonderful group we put together, huh?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Susie. And there's really no event that I love more during the year than this intensive. It's quite something. I'm so honored to have been asked to return, just to get to do constellations and think about constellations and do little workshops and receive little workshops.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's like a smorgasbord, a feast somehow of sweetness and learning and exploration. So I'm very honored to be here with you. Thank you, Leslie. Thanks for your support and guidance.
Thank you. And as sort of a sign off here, just to share with everyone, I have, a vision for this event that I think is coming through. Sara implies a little bit of gathering really high quality people to not only to do high quality, masterful work on behalf of everyone who comes and with everyone who comes, but to create a space where everyone can genuinely feel good and yummy, and energized and creative and able to be adventuresome and reach outside their comfort zones in a way that doesn't require, maybe Susie, your workshop will not be necessary. There will be no disequilibrium. I don't know, I can't promise that. But that there's a sense of like, we're really glad we're gathering and doing this work together. And that even the faculty feel as renewed and that they've received a gift as the recipients, which makes the participants feel better as well. It feels good. It's a virtuous circle. And so hopefully you've gotten a little bit of a sense of that from Sara and Susie. You'll get a feeling from that from Peter as well towards the end of the month. And I just want to especially thank Susie, who's still on the uptrend on her.
I know. I can't wait to go back to sleep.
And to all of you for coming and taking out an hour today as well. It's an honor when you all show up. So thank you for showing up and being part of this. And blessings to you all and in your constellations adventures. And may you all receive and feel the blessings of your ancestors in the day to come. Thank you. Good night, everybody, or good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, all.
Bye.
I've unmuted you all. You can all say bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Hasta la vista.
I'm taking a quick gallery view.
Adios. Bye.
This is